Well, that's the bucket.
I was a big fan of your earlier films.
In the quiet of a winter morning at Kensington Palace, where even the air seems to hold its breath, something long forgotten has returned to the surface. A set of hidden handwritten notes, untouched since the early 1990s, has found its way into the hands of Prince William. The discovery was not planned, not anticipated, and certainly not welcomed by those who have spent decades managing the delicate balance between private memory and public monarchy. But fate has a habit of arriving unannounced. The discovery in the East Wing. The morning light at Kensington Palace had a way of moving slowly, spilling into the corridors as though cautious not to disturb anything living. On the 3rd day of January, just after the clock struck 7, the East Wing was unusually awake. A small team from the archival department had been assigned to reorganize a series of storage cabinets that had been relocated from the old Lancaster room shortly before the holiday season. The task was routine, dull, and entirely administrative. No one expected it to become the center of an unfolding palace storm. A young clerk named Margaret was the first to notice the mistake. She lifted a narrow wooden drawer from an older cabinet, one of those heavy pieces moved between buildings so many times that its contents no longer matched the inventory logs. Inside the drawer, wrapped in embroidered linen, lay a small leather pouch with a brass clasp. The initials pressed into the leather were unmistakable even to staff members too young to have seen them used in their own time. D.S. Diana Spencer? Margaret froze. A breath caught halfway in her throat. She closed the drawer instinctively as though protecting the pouch from exposure. For a moment she looked around, hoping someone older, someone wiser might take the discovery from her hands. But she was alone with her duty, and duty inside these walls was never optional. She lifted the pouch, careful and reverent. It was light, hardly more than the weight of several folded sheets of paper. The linen wrap suggested intention. Someone had taken care years ago to hide these pages quietly, almost protectively. Yet here they were, resurfacing on an ordinary winter morning. Protocol dictated that any personal artifacts connected to the late princess should be documented and delivered immediately to a senior administrator. But protocol did not answer the question bubbling beneath Margaret's ribs: who hid this pouch? Why was it not logged? And what would happen now that it was found? Within minutes, the private secretary to Prince William had been summoned. He arrived without ceremony, his expression grave even before he saw the initials. He knew the implications. Anything connected to the late princess carried layers of emotional, historical, and institutional weight. And this pouch, unregistered and unexpected, threatened to complicate matters already strained by the palace's shifting internal alliances. It took less than 5 minutes for a meeting to be called between the private secretary, 2 senior advisors, and the head of archival oversight. Voices remained quiet, but tension sharpened the air. The core question was simple but perilous. Should the pouch be delivered directly to Prince William, or should it first pass through legal review to determine ownership? The gloves of delicacy that surrounded Princess Diana's memory were well known. Any misstep would be costly not only in public emotion, but in private family equilibrium. And this discovery, occurring at a moment when relations between senior households were already fragile, posed risk whichever direction they turned. One advisor argued that the pouch might contain sensitive material never intended for release. Another insisted that delaying its delivery to William would look suspicious if he later learned of their hesitation. The head of archival oversight spoke least but ended the debate with a single statement. If it bears her handwriting and it concerns him, then he must see it. They agreed. Whatever consequences followed, they would begin with Prince William. By 8:30, the private secretary walked the length of the west corridor toward the private study. He carried the pouch himself. No aide accompanied him, no announcement preceded him. He reached the door, knocked once, and waited. Prince William opened it, wearing the expression of a man already burdened by several worlds. The morning had barely begun, but the responsibilities waiting on his desk were already substantial. Meetings regarding the upcoming Commonwealth schedule, briefings on diplomatic tensions that required careful tone and timing, internal reports on media allegations that had grown sharper in recent weeks. He braced himself for yet another briefing. Instead, he saw the pouch. His eyes shifted. The air in the doorway thickened. The private secretary spoke only one sentence. "This was found this morning. It appears to be hers." William took the pouch without a word. His hand closed around it instinctively, as if memory itself guided the motion. He nodded once, quietly, and stepped back into the study. He closed the door, and the palace fell into breathless waiting. The notes themselves, ink that refused to fade. Inside the study, William stood motionless for a long moment. The pouch felt impossibly delicate in his hands, like a relic from a life he remembered in images rather than full sequences. He sank into the chair by the window, where the morning light fell in pale strands across his desk. He unclasped the brass lock and unfolded the linen. Several sheets lay inside, each creased into neat thirds, carefully arranged. The paper had aged gently, its edges soft, its surface touched by time but not damaged, and written across each page in looping script unmistakable to anyone who had ever known her, was the handwriting of Diana Spencer. William's breath slowed. The dates on the first page were from early 1992, a period that history remembers with sharp outlines and painful tension. The second letter came from late 1993, another from the summer of 1994. Each one seemed to belong to a year when voices around her grew louder, when public scrutiny expanded with relentless hunger, when private truths and public narratives collided in ways no one could fully control. William unfolded the first page. "My darling boy," the letter began. There was no hesitation in the ink. Her handwriting had always moved like water, fluid and emotional. She wrote of moments he was too young to remember. She wrote of fears she never shared aloud. She wrote of navigating an institution she believed would one day surround him with both duty and danger. She warned of people who would offer loyalty only when convenient, and of others who would hide motives behind carefully trained courtesy. In one paragraph, her tone shifted. "There will come a season," she wrote, "when the words spoken to you will not match the truths beneath them. Trust your instincts. They will be the last gift I am able to leave you." William read the line twice. Outside the study, senior aides waited in the corridor, exchanging silent glances. The palace walls were thick, but not thick enough to hide the atmosphere of returning ghosts. Inside, William unfolded the second page. She spoke of the brothers, her boys as she called them. She described their different temperaments even in childhood. "You were always the steady one," she wrote. "You watched before you acted. You carried weight without letting it crush you. Your brother carried emotion like a storm, beautiful and unpredictable, but vulnerable to those who knew how to direct lightning." William paused, his jaw tensed. He continued. In another section, Diana wrote of the future with almost chilling clarity. She spoke of a family struggle she believed would unfold long after her lifetime. She described forces that would test the unity of her sons. She urged William to stay anchored, to protect his heart without hardening it. He set the page down, closing his eyes. Years had passed since her death, but the pain had never fully retreated. It simply changed shape, becoming something he carried quietly into adulthood, into marriage, into fatherhood, into the future placed upon him by birth and by expectation. He opened the third letter. This one cut deeper. She described whispers within the institution that she believed were meant to destabilize her. She referenced voices behind palace doors who operated in shadows, using influence like threads woven through every corridor. She feared those same voices might one day attempt to influence her sons. And then she wrote a single line that froze William completely. "Be careful of the one who speaks to you softly but stands too close to power." He read it again, slower this time. The ink had not faded, the warning had not aged. The meaning felt sharper now than it likely did when she first wrote it. A note slipped from the stack, smaller than the others, almost hidden between pages. William lifted it. It bore no date, only a brief message. "If you are reading this when you are grown, then something has happened that I feared but could not prevent. Remember what love looks like, even when surrounded by its imitation." William sat back in his chair. His throat tightened, not with tears, but with recognition. These letters were not simply memories, they were predictions, and they were arriving at a time when their truth felt painfully close. He placed the pages down, his hands trembling only slightly, and let the room settle around him. Outside his study door, the world continued its quiet rhythm. But inside, everything had shifted. The reaction, silence, then something sharper. The corridor outside William's study remained still, as though waiting for the next breath of the unfolding day. Staff moved quietly, aware that something significant was happening behind the closed door. Even those who knew nothing sensed the weight in the air, the kind that precedes a revelation too personal to be shared quickly. Inside, William rose from his chair and paced slowly. The letters lay open on his desk, their edges catching the morning light. Each step he took was measured, as though he was walking through memories rather than across the floor. He paused at the window. Beyond the glass, the palace gardens were muted by winter. Bare branches reached toward a sky thick with clouds, the air soft with the promise of snow. It struck him how unchanging those gardens were, standing silent witness to the cycles of family history, to joy and loss, to public applause and private devastation. The private secretary entered only when William called for him. He stepped inside with caution, closing the door gently behind him. William spoke first. "She wrote these for me. I do not know how they were hidden, or why, but she meant for me to see them." His voice was steady, but there was something beneath it, something that had not been heard in many years, a raw mix of grief, clarity, and awakening. The private secretary approached the desk. He did not read the letters. He did not ask permission. He simply waited. William lifted one of the pages. "Listen to this." He read aloud the line that had unsettled him most. "There will come a season when the words spoken to you will not match the truths beneath them. Trust your instincts." The private secretary felt a chill pass through him. William continued. "She knew something. She sensed something that was already in motion even then. And now I am standing in the middle of it." The private secretary did not respond immediately. Instead, he studied William's expression, searching for the deeper meaning behind his words. He had worked long enough inside the palace to recognize when a turning point had arrived. This was one of those moments. "What do you believe these letters are telling you?" he finally asked. William looked down at the pages. "They are reminding me of things I have ignored. They are telling me to stop accepting half-truths. And they are warning me that some of the people closest to me may not be as loyal as they appear." The private secretary inhaled slowly. "That is a serious implication, sir." William nodded. "And yet it does not surprise me. These past months have revealed cracks in places I once believed were solid." He lifted another sheet. "She wrote about someone who speaks softly but stands too close to power. Someone who manipulates slowly, almost invisibly. She feared that person might one day influence her sons." He traced the line with his fingertip. "I know who she meant." The private secretary did not ask who. He did not need to. The palace had been tense for months, strained by clashing priorities, shifting alliances, and quiet disagreements that had grown louder behind closed doors. Whispers circulated about certain senior figures whose influence was expanding in ways that raised concern. William folded the letters carefully. "I need time, and I need absolute discretion. No one must know the contents of these pages. Not yet." "Of course, sir." The private secretary hesitated, then added, "Do you plan to share them with anyone in the family?" William's expression hardened. A shadow crossed his features, the kind that comes when a man confronts the truth he has been avoiding. "Not today." He paused. "And possibly not ever." The private secretary bowed his head slightly. "Very well." William remained silent as the man left the room. The door closed and the study returned to quiet. But the stillness did not reach his mind. His thoughts moved rapidly, unraveling recent conversations, revisiting moments that now felt different when seen through the lens of his mother's warnings. He recalled a few carefully phrased suggestions from certain advisors, remarks that had felt innocuous then but now carried new meaning. He realized that these letters had not simply resurfaced. They had arrived at precisely the right moment, and they had woken something in him that had been sleeping far too long. The palace reacts. Whispered panic behind closed doors. News inside the palace never traveled loudly. It moved in threads, carried by glances, by unfinished sentences, by the tone of a closed door. By midday, whispers had already reached Clarence's house. Not the contents of the letters, of course, only that something had been found, something personal, something that had visibly unsettled the Prince of Wales. In the senior staff room at Clarence's house, a quiet unease took hold. Decisions made in the morning were suddenly reevaluated. Meetings planned for the week were rearranged. Conversations that had previously seemed ordinary were now revisited with suspicion, as though new meaning might be hidden between the lines. By mid-afternoon, a discreet message was drafted for King Charles's attention. Its wording was cautious, composed by 3 advisors and approved by a 4th. It stated that an unexpected personal item belonging to the late Princess Diana had been discovered and given directly to Prince William. It noted that William had requested privacy. It did not specify the nature of the item nor the contents. But withholding details did not lessen concern. If anything, it heightened it. At Sandringham, where the king had retreated for a short winter pause, the news arrived during a meeting about environmental initiatives scheduled for the early spring. Charles paused with the paper in his hand, the words drawing long and heavy across his thoughts. His advisors watched for a reaction, but the king's expression revealed little. He folded the message neatly. "We will discuss this soon," he said. Then he dismissed the room. Elsewhere within the royal circles, interpretations spread quickly. Some believed the pouch contained personal sentiments between mother and son. Others feared the letters might involve grievances from Diana's final years, moments of tension that had been carefully archived and rarely spoken aloud since. A few wondered whether the notes referenced individuals still active within the institution, individuals whose reputations relied on the silence of the past. Princess Anne, always pragmatic, received the news with an expression of restrained concern. She understood better than most the weight of memory and the difficulty of confronting ghosts. She also understood her nephew well enough to know that if he was shaken, the letters must contain more than nostalgia. He will not share them, she predicted during a small meeting with her senior staff. Not at first, and perhaps not at all. Camilla's reaction, upon being informed by a senior aide, was more complicated. Her relationship with the legacy of Diana had always been a subject laced with delicacy. She knew how fragile public sentiment remained, even after so many years. If the letters contained accusations or warnings, their release could destabilize both present and future. Her tone was careful, but her worry was unmistakable. "We must be prepared for the possibility that these letters change the atmosphere," she said. "If William views them as guidance, he may adjust his position on matters currently under negotiation." The palace atmosphere tightened further. Within Kensington Palace, advisors speculated quietly. They recalled that recent months had already brought tension between certain senior households regarding communication strategies and public engagements. William had been noticeably firmer in meetings, less willing to compromise on matters involving transparency and accountability. Some advisors believed he was reacting to evolving public opinion. Others believed a deeper shift was taking place. And now, with these letters resurfacing, the shift had found its catalyst. That evening in a private room at Sandringham, Charles met with 2 senior advisors. The conversation revolved around a single question: do we request access to the letters? The advisors exchanged looks. One suggested that doing so would signal mistrust. Another argued that not doing so could leave the king uninformed about matters that might affect the monarchy's stability. Charles listened. His expression softened into something weary. "We will not press him," he finally decided. "If he chooses to share them, he will. If he does not, that is his right." But in the quiet that followed, even the king sensed that the discovery of these letters marked the beginning of a shift inside the royal family. A shift that might bring old wounds to the surface. A shift that might redefine alliances. A shift that might force truths long avoided into the light. The palace braced itself. Because when the past speaks, The present has no choice but to listen. A brother in the crossfire. In the hours following the discovery, one question lingered above all others in Prince William's mind, pressing gently but persistently against his thoughts. Should he tell Harry? The brothers had once shared everything. Childhood memories, private fears, dreams of carving a different path than the one forced upon them. But adulthood had pulled them apart, not in sudden breaks, but in gradual distances. Each step away is carved by choices, misunderstandings, external influences, and the impossible pressure of public life. William returned to his desk and lifted the letter that mentioned the brothers explicitly. Diana's handwriting curved softly across the page as though she had written it while watching them play. "My boys," she wrote, "different spirits, same heart. The world will try to pull you apart. Guard against those who see opportunity in your separation." The words stung. His relationship with Harry had been strained for years, and the tension had only escalated after Harry's departure from formal royal duties. Media narratives fanned the flames. The geographical distance sharpened the emotional one. Conversations became rare, and when they did occur, they were often brief and cautious. William traced the letters with his thumb. He wondered what she would think now, what she would say, whether she would urge him to reach out or advise him to protect himself from further harm. The letters carried both love and warning, and he felt caught between them. A knock sounded at the door. His confidant and longest-serving advisor entered quietly. "You asked for me, sir?" William gestured toward the letters. "She wrote about him, about us." The advisor approached slowly. William continued, "I do not know whether I should tell him. These were meant for me, but they concern him as well. And the last thing I want is for this discovery to become another fault line between us." The advisor considered this. "If you share them, it may give him comfort, or it may give him leverage. It may reopen doors or reopen wounds." William exhaled. "That is precisely the problem. With us, nothing is simple anymore." He looked toward the window where the sky had begun to dim. "I do not want these letters to become political tools or emotional weapons. I do not want them discussed in interviews or leaked accidentally or used to justify choices already made. They are too personal, too sacred." The advisor nodded. "Then perhaps the question is not what he would want. It is what would serve you, and what she would have wanted." William looked down at Diana's script again. "She would have wanted peace," he said softly, "but I do not know if peace is possible right now." He sat in silence for a moment. "I will not send copies," he said finally. "Not yet." The advisor hesitated. "If he learns of the letters from someone else, sir, he may interpret your silence as exclusion." William's jaw tightened. "He already believes I exclude him. Sharing these letters will not change that. It may only confirm his fears if he misunderstands the context." He closed the folder. "For now, these stay here." But the matter did not rest easily in his heart. He felt the ache of a relationship strained too long, stretched by forces neither brother fully controlled. He wondered whether the letters were a reminder or a reckoning. He recalled something Diana once said to him when he was still a child. She told him that honesty between brothers must remain unbroken, because the world would always try to fracture it. He wished he could believe that honesty alone could mend the distance now. But adulthood had taught him a harder truth. Sometimes honesty could widen wounds before it healed them. He placed the letters in a drawer and locked it gently. In that moment, he made a choice, one that would shape the next chapter of his family's story. And though he did not yet know it, the absence of his decision would soon echo louder than any spoken words. The final note, a message meant for this exact moment. Late that night, long after the palace had quieted and the last of the staff had gone home, William returned to the study. Only a single lamp illuminated the room, casting warm light across the desk where the letters lay waiting. There was one envelope he had not opened earlier, smaller than the others, sealed with a faint imprint that looked almost handmade. No date, no title. Only his name is written in Diana's familiar script. He broke the seal with care. The message inside was brief, written with a softness that made the words feel like a whispered breath. "My dear William, if this letter reaches you in adulthood, then life has taken turns I feared but could not stop. I cannot guide you in person, but I trust you will know when to listen to your heart above all other voices. She wrote of leadership not as a crown or a role, but as a weight carried by those who were never allowed ordinary lives. She wrote of truth, the kind that does not shout, but pulls quietly until acknowledged. She wrote of a moment she foresaw, a moment when her eldest son would face a choice between preserving peace and revealing what had shaped him. You will know the moment, she wrote, and when it comes, choose honesty, even if it costs you comfort, even if it isolates you, even if it changes everything around you. William felt the words settle into him, not with shock, but with recognition. He had felt for months that he was approaching a crossroads, debates over transparency, tensions between households, shifting public expectations, private family strains. Every day had carried the sense of an unseen culmination. It was as though she had written the letter for this exact week, this exact season of his life. He set the page down gently. A knock came at the door. The private secretary entered quietly. "Forgive the interruption, sir. There are matters that need your attention tomorrow, and there is something else." He hesitated. "There is speculation spreading among certain offices that you came into possession of something significant today. They do not know what it is, but they know its origin." William expected as much. "Thank you. Ensure that no one attempts to retrieve or review anything without my consent." "Of course, sir. And, if I may, you seem changed." William considered this. "Not changed," he said. "Just reminded." The private secretary bowed his head and left. William turned back to the final note. The message felt less like a letter and more like a mirror, reflecting back the man he was becoming. He took a long breath. He thought of his children asleep down the hall. He thought of the future waiting for them. He thought of the monarchy he would one day lead, and the weight of doing so with integrity. He thought of the voices that surrounded him, some faithful, some strategic, some quietly pressuring. And he thought of his mother, gone but suddenly closer than she had been in decades. He folded the letter with reverence and placed it atop the others. Then he opened a secure drawer, laid the pouch inside, and locked it with a decisive click. Not out of secrecy, but out of protection. He stood by the window, staring into the winter darkness. Snow had begun to fall, slow and deliberate, the kind that softened the world without erasing it. In that moment, William felt something settle within him, a clarity, a direction, a resolve that would shape the coming months, the coming years, the coming legacy. Diana's handwriting may have faded slightly with time, but her voice had returned at precisely the moment he needed it most. And now, guided by truths she left behind, he would move forward, not as a boy shaped by tragedy, but as a man prepared to lead with the honesty she had always hoped he would choose.